My wife secretly transferred $250, $0 of our savings to her ex-boyfriend's LLC after our big fight, then locked me out of our house, and now I'm fighting over inherited property valued at $1.2 million. I thought I knew her, but I'm starting to doubt everything. I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this. Honestly, I thought I knew my wife, Lisa, pretty well. We'd been married for 8 years, built a life together, bought a house, had a kid. She always seemed a little bitchy sometimes, but I chalked it up to her being stressed or just having a bad day. Still, she was smart, beautiful, everything I thought I wanted. Until one day, everything changed in a way I never saw coming. It started with small signs. Lisa was acting weird lately, secretive, more distant. She'd hide her phone when I entered the room, delete texts, and sometimes leave her laptop open with weird tabs. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe she was just stressed at work or dealing with some personal stuff. But then I noticed her bank statements. Our joint account had a sudden, huge transfer. 250, disappeared from our savings account. I thought I was dreaming. I checked again and there it was, gone. I confronted her about it one night. She brushed it off, said it was some investment she was making that I didn't need to worry. She looked annoyed, like I was bothering her. But I knew her well enough to sense she was lying. Something wasn't right. I pressed her and she snapped at me, telling me I was paranoid, that I was overreacting. She said she was doing it for us, for our future. But I had this gut feeling that I was being played. Then came the fights, more intense than usual. She'd yell at me for questioning her, call me insecure, accuse me of not trusting her. Meanwhile, I kept digging. I hired a private investigator, something I never thought I'd do, and what he found out knocked me flat. Lisa had been secretly seeing her ex, James. She'd been sneaking around behind my back, meeting him late at night, sending texts, calling him when she thought I wasn't looking. All the while, she was telling me she loved me, that I was the only one. That was the moment I realized I'd been blind. She'd lied about everything. The money transfer. She transferred half our savings, 250, to James's LLC. She'd been funneling our hard-earned savings into his business, probably to fund his schemes or some shady deal. And the worst part, she'd done it right after we had a huge fight. I caught her in her lies, and suddenly, everything I thought I knew about her felt like a lie. She had the nerve to act innocent when I confronted her. She said I was overreacting, that I was jealous, that James was just a friend. She even had the gall to say I was imagining things, that she'd never cheat on me, but the evidence was staring me in the face. I found the bank statements, the texts, the emails. She'd been lying to my face for months, and the betrayal didn't stop there. Turns out she'd already started planning her escape, locked me out of the house, changed the locks, and refused to let me in. Just like that, she cut me out of my own life. That's when I realized she wasn't just cheating on me physically. She was stealing from us financially, destroying everything we'd built. I'd always thought I was the one who controlled our money, but she was secretly siphoning off our savings to fund her affair and her new life. I felt sick, angry, betrayed beyond words. How could she do this? How could she lie so easily? It's like I was living with a different person. The woman I married was gone, replaced by someone cold, manipulative, and calculating. Now I'm stuck in this mess, fighting over property worth over $1 million, trying to figure out what's mine and what's hers. I don't even know who she is anymore. I don't recognize the woman I thought I loved. I thought I knew everything about her, but I was dead wrong. The worst part, I don't even know if I want her back or if I can ever trust her again. All I know is that I've been played and I'm trying to pick up the pieces. After discovering everything, I felt like I was hit by a train. The shock, the anger, the disappointment, it all hit me at once. I remember sitting in our living room, staring at the bank statements, trying to process how she could do something so calculated. How she could betray me not just emotionally, but financially as well. That $250, $0 was our savings for the kids' college fund, our future plans, the security I thought we had. She had taken it all and handed it over to her ex, James, like it was nothing. The moment I found out about the transfer, I felt this strange numbness. I couldn't believe she'd be capable of something so cold. I mean, Lisa always had a bitchy attitude, sure, but I never thought she'd be capable of this level of betrayal. The more I thought about it, the more furious I became. I started to see her lies for what they were. She'd always been good at hiding her true self behind a mask. She tell me she loved me, that she was committed, but meanwhile she was planning her escape. I decided I needed to confront her directly. I couldn't just let her get away with this. The next day I came home early from work, hoping to catch her in the act or at least get some answers. When I entered the house, I saw her sitting on the couch, sipping her wine like she didn't have a care in the world. She looked up, saw me, and immediately put on that fake innocent face she always used when she was lying. "Where have you been?" she asked, her tone dripping with false sweetness. I didn't hold back. I laid everything out, the bank statements, the texts, the evidence I'd gathered. Her face paled for a second, then she started lying again, spinning this story about how it was all a misunderstanding, how she was just trying to help James get his LLC off the ground, how she accidentally transferred the money. She claimed she was doing it for us, that she wanted to surprise me with a trip or some big gift. I couldn't believe her. She was so blatant, so brazen, like she thought I was stupid. I lost my temper. I told her I knew she'd been cheating, that I knew she'd been lying to my face for months. I told her I'd hired a pie and that her ex-boyfriend was not just a friend, he was her lover. Her reaction: she threw a fit, called me paranoid, and said I was just jealous, that I was overreacting because I was insecure. But I knew better. I'd seen the texts, the secret meetings, the late-night calls. It was all there, clear as day. She then did something that shook me to my core. She everything said I was crazy, that I was imagining things. She claimed she'd never cheated, never transferred our money without my permission. She said I was just jealous because she'd been working late or talking to her friends. But I knew she was lying. I could see it in her eyes, the guilt, the defiance. It was like she was trying to gaslight me, to make me doubt myself. That confrontation was the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with pain, betrayal, and anger. I was crushed. I trusted her with everything. I thought we had a solid life, a future. And now I was left with nothing but questions and a deep sense of loss. I kept asking myself how I missed the signs, how I didn't see what was happening right under my nose. It's like she was living a double life, and I was just too blind to see it. The emotional toll was brutal. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, heart pounding, thinking about everything she'd done, how she'd lied, manipulated, stolen from us. I felt betrayed, not just as a husband but as a man. How could the woman I loved turn into someone so cold, so calculated? Every time I looked at her, I saw a stranger. She'd always been bitchy, sure, but this was something else entirely. It was like she had a whole other person living inside her, and I had been nothing more than a fool for trusting her. I started questioning everything: our memories, our promises, even the inheritance we'd received from my parents. That property, valued at over $1 million, suddenly seemed like a battlefield. She was fighting me over it, claiming it was hers because she'd supposedly contributed more after I found out about her affair. But I knew the truth. She was just trying to control the situation, to take what she could before I cut her out entirely. I didn't sleep much after that. I was consumed by this whirlwind of feelings: anger, sadness, betrayal. I wondered if I should even fight for the marriage anymore or just walk away and start over. But the damage was done. She had already crossed a line I never thought she would. The woman I married, the woman I trusted with my life, was gone. Replacing her was someone I didn't recognize, someone who lied, cheated, and stole from us, all in the name of her own selfish needs. Now I'm stuck trying to figure out what to do next. How do you rebuild trust after something like this? How do you move on when the person you loved has become a stranger? I keep thinking about everything I've lost: my money, my peace of mind, my sense of security. And honestly, I don't see a way back. All I know is that I'm not going to let her get away with it. I'm planning my next move, and it's going to be ruthless. Because at this point, I'm done playing nice. After the initial shock wore off, I realized I had to act fast. The way she was locking me out of the house, changing the locks, and trying to erase everything that tied us together, she was clearly trying to cut me out completely. I couldn't just sit around and hope she'd come to her senses, or that somehow she'd admit everything. No, I had to be strategic. I started gathering every piece of evidence I could find, screenshots of the texts, bank statements, emails, even recordings of some of our conversations when she wasn't aware. I knew I needed proof to back up my claims, especially since she was so good at spinning her lies. I called a lawyer the same day I found out about the transfer. I explained everything: her affair, the money she'd siphoned off, how she was trying to push me out of the house and the property. The lawyer listened carefully, then told me I had a strong case for not only divorce but also for recovering the stolen money and contesting her claims over the property. That was a relief, but it also made me realize how much damage had already been done. She'd already taken a huge chunk of our savings, and I had no idea where she was planning to go or what she was planning next. Meanwhile, I started planning my own moves. I reached out to the bank to freeze the account where she transferred the money, something I learned I could do temporarily while we sorted things out legally. I also contacted a private investigator again, this time to track her movements and see if she was planning to leave town. She'd been acting so paranoid, locking down everything, and I suspected she was trying to hide something even bigger. I needed to catch her in the act if I could. One of the most shocking moments came when I found out she'd been secretly meeting with James, her ex, at a hotel downtown. I'd always suspected she was still seeing him, but seeing her in person, with my own eyes, was another level of betrayal. I decided I had to confront her face to face. I arranged to meet her at that hotel, pretending I was just passing by. When I saw her sitting there with James, laughing and holding hands, I felt this surge of rage. How could she do this? How could she lie to me, cheat on me, and then rub it in my face? I didn't walk in right away. I just watched for a while, trying to process what I was seeing. She looked happy, relaxed, like she'd already moved on. That's when I realized I was fighting not just for my money or my property, but for my dignity. I had to do something drastic. I took pictures, recorded some audio of their conversation, and then left quietly, feeling sick to my stomach. That night I sat down and drafted a plan. I knew I couldn't just confront her with the evidence and hope she'd change. No, I needed leverage. I decided to file for divorce, but more importantly, I wanted to expose her affair publicly. If I had to, I'd take this to court and make her pay for what she'd done. I also began to prepare myself emotionally because I knew this wasn't going to be easy. Betrayal like this cuts deep, and I was hurt, angry, and feeling pretty damn helpless. I started to realize how much her lies had affected me, how I'd been naive, how I'd trusted her blindly. She'd always been the bitchy wife, snapping at me, throwing fits, but I never imagined she'd be capable of this level of deception. It's like I was married to a stranger. My mind kept circling back to the money, the fact that she'd transferred so much without my knowledge, and that she'd probably been planning her escape for months. The inheritance we'd received from my parents, the property I thought was safe, was now I felt a mixture of grief and rage. Grief, because I'd lost the woman I thought I knew, and rage because I felt so betrayed, so played. I kept asking myself what I did wrong, what I could have done differently, but the truth was, this was all on her. She was the one who lied, who cheated, who stole. I had to pick myself up and fight for what's right: my money, my property, my dignity. I couldn't let her walk away with everything. I knew the legal battle would be long and messy, but I was ready for it. I owed her nothing now, especially after what she did. The most frustrating part: the more I uncovered, the more I realized how deep her deception ran. She'd been manipulating me for months, maybe even years, and I'd never seen it coming. I kept replaying all the signs: her secretive phone habits, her sudden distance, the way she'd lie so easily. It's like she'd been living a lie, hiding her true self behind a mask of bitchy indifference. And now I was left to pick up the pieces of a life I thought was stable but was actually built on lies. I'm not sure what the future holds. I know I have a long fight ahead of me, both legally and emotionally. But one thing's clear: I can't trust her anymore. Not that I ever really did, but now the cracks are so deep I wonder if I ever will. For now, I'm focusing on protecting what's mine, gathering evidence, and preparing myself for the inevitable court battles. All I want is justice: justice for the money she stole, the lies she told, and the life she almost destroyed. The days that followed were a whirlwind. I spent every available moment digging into her financial records, trying to piece together exactly how much she'd taken and where the money had gone. I contacted the bank, lawyers, the private investigator. I was relentless. Every time I thought I had a lead, another twist popped up. It was like she'd planned this from the start, leaving breadcrumbs everywhere. That transferred $250, $0 wasn't just a random act of greed. It was part of a carefully orchestrated scheme to cut me out and fund her new life. She had been telling everyone she was doing fine, that I was just jealous and paranoid, but I knew better. I'd seen her sneaking around, caught her in lies, and now I had the evidence. The more I uncovered, the more I realized she'd been manipulating me for months, probably even years. That bitchy attitude, her constant sniping at me, her sudden bursts of anger, they were all signs I ignored. I convinced myself she was just stressed or having a bad day. Turns out, she was hiding a whole other person inside her, someone capable of betrayal on a scale I never imagined. I decided I had to confront her again, this time with everything laid out on the table. I arranged to meet her at the house, knowing she'd be there, and I wanted her to see that I wasn't backing down. When she opened the door, her face twisted into that familiar smirk, like she thought she was in control. I threw the documents on the table, bank statements, texts, emails. Her eyes widened for the first time, and then that bitchy attitude kicked in. She started lying again, claiming she never transferred any money without my approval, that she'd been helping James with some business deal, that I was just overreacting because I was insecure. I didn't buy it. I told her I had proof, screenshots, recordings, everything. I told her I knew she'd been cheating, that James was more than just a friend, and that she'd been funneling our savings into his LLC. Her reaction: she got defensive, started crying, and then turned it all around. Said I was the one who was cheating emotionally, that I'd been distant, that she'd only been trying to save the marriage. I couldn't believe the audacity. She was spinning stories so fast I almost felt dizzy, but I wasn't going to let her gaslight me anymore. I told her I was done with her lies, that I was going to take everything I could, our property, the inheritance, the money she stole. She kept insisting she loved me, that she'd never cheat, that I was just imagining things. But I knew better. I saw the desperation in her eyes. She was panicking because she knew I was onto her. She tried to manipulate me, to guilt me into backing down, but I'd reached my limit. That confrontation was just the beginning. Over the next few days, I filed for divorce, started the process to freeze her assets, and prepared to fight her over the property. I knew she'd try to claim she had some right to it because of her supposed contributions, but I had legal advice telling me otherwise. The property was in my name, and I had proof that she'd been trying to hide her affair and drain our savings. I was ready to go to court if I had to. The emotional toll was heavy. I felt betrayed on every level, by her lies, by her betrayal, by the fact that I'd loved someone who turned out to be so manipulative. I'd always been the kind of guy who trusted, who believed in honesty, but Lisa shattered that illusion. I kept replaying the moments where I should have seen the signs, where I missed the red flags. Now I was left questioning everything: my judgment, my trust, even my worth. In the midst of all this chaos, I also started thinking about the inheritance. That property, that house, was supposed to be our future. Now it's a she claims it's hers because she helped me with some renovations, but I know the truth. She's just trying to claim what she can before I shut her out completely. The more I fight, the more I realize how deep her deception runs. She's been planning her escape for months, maybe longer, and I was just too blind to see it. Honestly, I feel exhausted. The betrayal has left me drained, but I also feel a strange sense of clarity. I see her for what she really is: someone who lied, cheated, stole, and manipulated. I'm angry as hell, but I'm also determined to get justice. I want her out of my life, out of my property, and out of my mind. I know the legal battles will be long and messy, but I'm prepared. I've got nothing left to lose now. All I want is to rebuild, to get my life back on track, and to make sure she doesn't get away with destroying everything we built together. The hardest part: realizing that I was living with a stranger all along, someone who was willing to betray me for her own selfish reasons. It's a bitter pill, but I'm starting to accept that sometimes people change when you're not looking. And sometimes you have to fight to reclaim what's yours, even if it means tearing down the illusions you once held. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know one thing: she's not going to take everything from me without a fight. The legal process kicked into high gear, and I quickly realized how complicated things could get. She was fighting me on every front, trying to claim the property as her own, asserting that she'd contributed more after I uncovered her lies, and even suggesting she deserved some sort of settlement because of all she had been through. It was infuriating. I had the evidence, but she was good at spinning stories and twisting facts to her advantage. That bitchy attitude of hers was now working against me in court, and I knew I had to be smarter, more calculated. I hired a top attorney who specialized in property disputes and marital assets. We pulled every document, every email, every bank transaction, proof that she'd been secretly siphoning our savings, that she'd lied about her intentions, and that she'd been planning her escape for months. It was a war of evidence and words, and I was determined to come out on top. Meanwhile, she was doing her best to paint herself as the victim, claiming she'd only acted out of desperation, that she'd been manipulated by her ex, and that she deserved some kind of leniency. Her lawyer filed motions to delay the proceedings, claiming that I was being harsh and that I was trying to ruin her reputation. Honestly, I didn't care. I was sick of her lies, her manipulations, her bitchy attitude, everything that made her who she was. I just wanted to get the truth out, get my money back, and secure my property. I knew this wasn't going to be easy, but I also knew I had the facts on my side. One of the most surprising turn of events was when I received an anonymous tip that she was planning to leave the country. I immediately contacted my lawyer, and we worked with authorities to monitor her movements. Sure enough, she was making arrangements, booking flights, packing her bags, and trying to vanish. I felt this rush of panic mixed with determination. I couldn't let her run away with everything she'd stolen. I had to act fast. I served her with court papers, demanding full disclosure of her assets, and filed for an emergency injunction to freeze her accounts and prevent her from leaving the country. When she found out, she flipped out, crying and screaming that I was ruining her life. But I didn't care. I had the evidence, I had the law on my side, and I wasn't about to let her escape without facing the consequences. That day, I saw her for what she really was: a manipulative, selfish woman who would do anything to get what she wanted. In the meantime, I also started working on reclaiming the property. I hired appraisers and inspectors, and I found out that she'd been claiming renovations and improvements she never did, just to inflate her share of the property. I had receipts, before and after photos, and witnesses to prove that she was lying. I prepared my case meticulously, knowing that this fight was far from over. Emotionally, I was drained. Every day was a hope, frustration, anger, despair. I kept asking myself how I could have been so blind, how I missed the signs, how I let her manipulate me for so long. But deep down, I knew I had to stay strong. This wasn't just about money or property. It was about reclaiming my dignity and protecting what little I had left of the life I thought was real. The most painful realization was that she'd been using me all along, using our shared assets, her supposed love, her fake bitchy attitude to hide her true intentions. She lied, cheated, stole from me, and now she was trying to run away from the consequences. I couldn't let her do that, not without a fight. I was prepared to go all the way, even if it meant losing sleep or risking everything. Because at the end of the day, I knew I deserved better, and I was not going to let her get away with destroying what we built. I've learned a lot through this process. Trust no one blindly, always keep your eyes open, and never underestimate how far someone will go when they're desperate. I also realized that sometimes, the only way to truly protect yourself is to stand your ground, fight for your rights, and never let anyone take advantage of you. This isn't just about money or property. It's about reclaiming my life and making sure she pays for the pain she's caused. I don't know what tomorrow will bring, but I know I'll be ready. And I'll never let her manipulate me again. The court battles dragged on for months, and every day felt like a Test of my patience and resilience. I stayed relentless, presenting all the evidence I had collected, proof of her affair, the financial transfers, her attempts to leave the country, and her false claims about contributing to the property. The more she tried to spin her lies, the more undeniable the truth became. Her lawyer's tactics were aggressive, trying to delay and dismiss, but I had my legal team pushing hard to hold her accountable. In the end, the judge saw through her manipulations, and we reached a settlement that favored me. She had to return the stolen money, and the property was awarded to me outright. When the ruling finally came in my favor, I felt a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. All the chaos, all the anger, the betrayal, it was finally over, at least legally. But inside, I was a different person. I'd been forced to confront the ugly truth about someone I'd loved and trusted blindly. I'd lost a lot, money, years of what I thought was a happy marriage, my sense of security. And yet I also gained clarity. I saw who she really was, someone selfish, manipulative, and willing to destroy everything for her own benefit. After the dust settled, I decided to move out of the house. I couldn't stand the sight of her anymore, knowing what she'd done. I sold the property, took the inheritance, and started fresh. It wasn't easy, trusting someone again, rebuilding a life from scratch, but I knew I had no choice. I had to put this chapter behind me, no matter how difficult. The betrayal had broken something inside me, but I refused to let it define my future. In the end, I learned a lot about myself. I learned to trust my instincts more, to listen to that nagging feeling when something doesn't sit right. I learned that some people are capable of incredible deception, and that the only way to protect yourself is to stay vigilant. More than anything, I learned that revenge isn't about hurting someone else. It's about reclaiming your own dignity and peace of mind. I took back what was mine, fought for justice, and now I can finally breathe again. Looking back, I realize how much this experience changed me. I used to think marriage was about trust and loyalty, but now I see it's also about being prepared for the worst. I'm not naive anymore. I know people can surprise you with how low they're willing to go. But I also know that standing up for yourself, fighting for what's right, and never backing down will always be worth it. I may have lost a lot, but I gained a new sense of strength and clarity. So, if there's one thing I want others to take away from this, it's this. Trust is fragile, and sometimes it's worth being cautious. Watch out for the red flags, don't ignore your gut, and never assume someone's loyalty is guaranteed. Because when betrayal hits, it hits hard. But you have to fight back. You have to stand tall and reclaim your life. That's what I did, and I'm finally starting to feel like I'm moving forward. The pain will fade, but the lessons will stay with me forever.